Eye-opener, collective memory loss, seems to me to be one of the biggest impediments to solving so many of the issues that we have today. Before we get into that, let's first look at the greatest consequence that impacts most people when collective memory loss encompasses the majority of a nation. Given that a nation is a man-made construct in that it can only be formed when a majority agrees that it should exist and must continue to agree that its existence is justified. As evidence, I will ask those listening to this post to try to find a single nation or country in which few of its citizens supported said nation. Now, I'm not saying there weren't those nations in which a dictator didn't rule against the will of the people. That has occurred throughout history. But even in such cases, there was a tipping point to which the people collectively agreed that the structure of the nation and the bodies that governed it had to change. Whenever the dictator or monarch was deemed unworthy, they were deposed, dethroned, demoted, or deleted, and in their place a parliamentarian republican or democratic government was elected. In each and every country, nation or empire to ever exist, once faith in that country, nation or empire was lost, that country, nation or empire collapsed. At some point, too many of their citizens gave up on the state. Whether this was due to a country impoverishing too many of its citizens, or a nation prioritizing its people last, or an empire extending its reach beyond its capacity, they all fell into obscurity or are falling into obscurity as I speak these words. This seems to be the fate of most, if not all countries, nations and empires. A couple of distinctions in these downfalls being the speed at which the collapse occurred and the degree to which they fell into obscurity. For instance, the impact of the Roman Empire can still be felt to this very day, even if one were to limit its impact to the romantic notion of life as a Roman citizen. While other nations have been completely forgotten by all but the most dedicated historians. No one believes that these nations should exist today, not even the Roman Empire. Though a collapse is most likely inevitable for every nation, the severity and rate at which that collapse might occur is something that can be mitigated. And therein lays the problem with the collective memory loss that seems so prevalent today. And it's not just the scale, or that it's a short-term memory loss that's at issue. People seem to forget the actions, words, and deeds of our leaders, regardless of the scope or impact of those actions, words, and deeds, something that will be made apparent in the following examples. So let's get started. Let us reflect on the worst things that our leaders have done, and let's question why we not only allowed these atrocities to slip our mind, but why we didn't hold anyone accountable when those things were fresh in our minds. By the time Hillary Clinton faced off against Donald Trump in 2016, she had served as Obama's Secretary of State and had overseen the sale of nuclear materials to a Russian company, but claimed that Trump was the one beholden to Putin. Though it was said that the nuclear material involved in that sale would never leave the United States, there were so many other nefarious things that were exposed about that deal. And at the center of all of the controversy and seeming corruption were the Clintons. Both the Clintons and the Clinton Foundation received money from a Russian company, but Clinton claimed Trump was Putin's puppet. Now, I'm no Trump fan, but it seems odd to me that no one seemed to remember this fact when Clinton projected her misbehavior onto Trump. Moving on. In 1948, Israel committed the Nakba, which basically removed Palestinians from their homes through coercion and unspeakable violence. Less than 3 years after the Jews were liberated from concentration camps and the atrocities committed within, they turned around and committed the same, if not similar, war crimes against an innocent population that had nothing to do with Hitler's barbarism. Just 3 years after the end of World War II, the Jews did to Palestinians what the Nazis had done to them. Just watch the documentary about Tantura referenced below and wonder why things like this were never shown in your history class. Next up, QAnon among others claimed the Clintons had ties to a pedophile ring years before the Epstein arrest. But everyone seemed to have forgotten this allegation when the Jeffrey Epstein scandal broke, even though it was discovered that Bill Clinton had flown on Epstein's Lolita Express 22 times. 5 times more than Bill admitted to flying on that plane. The same goes for other prominent figures like Bill Gates, Prince Andrew, Donald Trump, and more. And while this looks bad for all of those who got caught vacationing on Epstein's island, It seems that at least one reporter would look back into the conspiracy theories raised by the likes of QAnon. Or was this all just one innocent coincidence? Moving on. Here's a recent one. This one makes me question my sanity because I remember this being reported on the news before the last election. I don't remember it being brought up by reporters or the Trump campaign during that same election cycle. Basically, Biden sent National Guard troops down to Texas to remove the razor wire that Governor Abbott put up to stop illegal immigration through Texas. What was even more important than the battle between Biden and Abbott was the fact that 25 states sided with Abbott over the matter. To me, this sounded like the makings of a potential second American Civil War. How else could this be viewed as half of the states in the US opposed the actions of the federal government? The only alternative to my claim could only be that the news sources reporting on this story were exaggerating or lying, which would imply an incitement of violence which is against the law. And what is most curious is that so many people claimed and still do claim that Trump was and is still pushing America to another civil war. And worst still, no matter what the outcome of that standoff in Texas, we couldn't even have held Biden accountable. Because of dementia, you know? Moving on, Ukraine was labeled as one of the world's most corrupt governments, as well as being infested with neo-Nazis. But Russia is claimed to be the only threat in that part of the world. Moving on. America supported Osama bin Laden, Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi, and Al-Qaeda until it became inconvenient to do so. Then America killed them. If you like the videos here and would like to see more, let your friends and family know about this website called Mike Sons Entertainment on YouTube. There are plenty of blogs, news and websites reporting and complaining about our leaders and their failures. How many, however, are offering or even pointing to any solutions? The book Solutions, Enough Complaining, Let's Fix America by Chris Osman does, and it can be found on Amazon or at www.mikesonsentertainment.com. To find out other ways you're being screwed by your current leaders, check out the posts on this blog daily. Learn about the biggest and worst issues that America and its people face today. You can also check into this blog daily to hear about those issues that America and its people will face in the near and distant future. If, however, you would like to discover possible solutions to either mitigate the worst impacts of these issues or solutions to avoid them altogether, keep listening. The problems we face are not as complicated as so many leaders and news reports claim. They are man-made and are only claimed as complicated so those who are responsible can maintain control. For example, there is a persistent argument that moving government is like turning a cruise ship around. It is supposedly a long process that can only be achieved incrementally. While this may be true for laws and policies that benefit the majority of Americans, it does not seem to be so for that smallest of American minorities. When one examines the policies and laws that benefit that minority, known as the elite or the rich, the speed at which those laws are passed is exponentially faster. While most of us sit on the deck chairs, waiting for the Titanic to avoid the myriad of icebergs of which we seem to continually run afoul, the elite ride comfortably in speedboats. If, according to the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal, why do the rich live quite different lives than the rest of us? Where is our speedboat? In 2018, Chris Osman wrote a book highlighting the problems humanity would face if more power, wealth, and control were funneled to a small group of individuals, groups, or organizations. In that book, Mr. Osman provides solutions, offered up from himself and others, to the inevitable problems we would all face. In it, he also provided a means for the public to analyze, compare, and contrast the words and deeds of those we've chosen to follow against our real-world experiences. To this end, Mr. Osman provides the means for readers to disseminate information as provided by their news sources of choice, their elected officials, and any other authority they choose to follow. The book, titled Solutions, Enough Complaining, Let's Fix America, offers a means to hold leaders up, not just to a higher standard than is currently accepted, but to one that will improve lives. What did they do? Click the link below and get your copy of Solutions today.